Sir, I want to pick the point you made during the presentation where you said that there are multiple reasons for the slowdown this time around, not one reason as we saw over the past decade. Could you highlight a bit on this, and also if you could comment on the extent of damage this can do to demand in the coming quarters?
Okay, I think Neha, see, we have seen earlier in the past 2-3 slowdowns, but this time, and every time there was a very clear assignable cause. This has happened. Now we see multiple reasons which are causing this slowdown. For example, liquidity concern is one. Second thing is rising fuel prices, interest rates, overall sentiments not being good. Okay, and I think. So normally if you have one reason, you take action. Now there are multiple reasons you have to manage that, and that's the company we are trying to manage that.
Add to that the fact that as far as financing is concerned, many customers who would be seeking that are borrowing from areas which are already under stress. So there is some bit of a pinch there as well, be it the liquidity crunch or even more specifically the purchasing capacity of many of these customers in rural areas, for example, seems to have been dented this time around.
Actually, purchasing capacity, you are right. But I think what we are seeing is rural market for us is still robust and we are doing good. But yes, on the first point, finance, you are saying, see, approval rates, once a customer applies, which used to be around 90%, 95% customers will get loan. Now that has fallen to 65-70%. That's a very sharp dip, and that's what you see the slowdown.
Also, sir, when it comes to judicious management of inventory, as you call it, how are you going about that? Because you did highlight that third quarter could see an upswing when it comes to demand in certain categories. What is the status of inventory? And if you can speak a bit more about how you expect this to be in the coming quarters in light of the current environment.
Yeah, now if you really have to go back almost a year actually. See what happens every time in anticipation of festival season, manufacturers start building inventory. So last year we started, first festival is Kerala, Onam happens, and last year you would remember there was a flood in Kerala and that was washed out. So inventory did not sell. Then came festival and all of us live in hope. We thought festival, Diwali, Dashera, nothing happened. Then we thought year end something will happen. So inventory kept on piling up. Okay, but as manufacturer, I think towards the fourth quarter, we started reducing inventory. And currently our inventory may be around 5 weeks. We are committed to bring it down to 2 weeks by September.
So can you share more visibility on the first half of this fiscal, more so given the fact that May 23rd is just a few days away and there'll be more clarity on the new government? Do you expect that this will help revive demand in some areas?
I think certainty always helps. Because car is a product, when you buy, when you feel certain, you feel good about it. And so certainty definitely will help us. And you asked about, I think normally quarter one is very tough quarter, which we are witnessing. And quarter one onwards, it start improving.
Also, sir, BS6 is one area where we've seen a lot of regulatory to and fro, and something that will affect and influence your strategy in the coming days. In fact, many customers, according to experts, will want to reschedule their purchases, anticipating the price hike coming forward, 1 lakh in some categories, as you pointed out. Do you think that the demand in the second half of the fiscal will be mainly led by this sentiment? And also, what kind of a impact do you see after the BS6 rollout?
I think multiple questions rolled into one, and many reasons will happen. I think, as we said, when certainty comes, sentiments will improve. Sub-preponement will certainly happen because people who buy diesel, they are very price conscious, and prices will go up by more than 1 lakh, so there will be preponement. Then the normal pull about festive seasons will start happening. And honestly, in India, only 25-30 people out of 1,000 have cars. So it will manifest finally into demand. When? Let's see.
So my last question, speaking specifically about the diesel category, can you talk a bit about what your strategy will be with implementation of BS6?
I think our strategy will be to make sure that BS6 is implemented in time, much before the time. Second part, Neha, would be that for 1st of April, we have to make sure that stock is zero. So we are working big time on that, and we provide very fuel efficient, cost effective products, and then customer decides.
Sir, you said that slowdown is a real concern, something that we have to take note of. We have seen that trend past few quarters. There was a slight improvement this quarter. Could you tell us how you expect this to pan out in the coming days in light of the current dynamics we are seeing? More so because during your commentary, the management also pointed out that an uptick in the automotive industry would be imperative for a pickup in the overall economy. Do you see that happening soon?
Yeah, so I think before I talk about slowdown, if we do a recap of the last financial year, I think Tata Motors commercial vehicles has done fairly well. I mean, we grew our volumes by 17% for the whole year. Revenue grew by 21%. We grew our market share in three segments, that is medium and heavies, intermediate and light, and small commercial vehicles. And at the same time, we also grew our EBIT and operational PBT margin. So I think overall a very good year. But if we look at the last year, H1 was even more growth, more robust growth. The issue started more from H2. And within all the segments, I think the issue was more in medium and heavy commercial vehicles. It started with the liquidity crunch after the ILFS crisis. Then we also had a regulatory change with the increased axle load norm, which increased the capacity of vehicles in the park. And that kind of freight increase was not available, so the freight rates were also a bit depressed, and all this therefore actually led to a reduction in the demand for the M&HCV cargo vehicles. Within M&HCV, I think tippers were still doing pretty well because infrastructure projects funded by the government, pushed by the government, were doing pretty well. Within the rest of the segments, I think intermediate and light and SCV continued to grow at a kind of a stable rate, I mean lower growth rate as compared to H1. As we get into this year, I think some of these headwinds still remain. The increased axle load regulation after impact is still there, and therefore cargo is something which one has seen a degrowth in April also. Tipper of course did well, and but even in infrastructure projects there is a bit of a slowdown in past 1 or 2 months, but we hope that now other things out of the way, the infrastructure projects should also go up. And therefore medium and heavies is something that one may see some a slowdown in the Q1. Going ahead, I think the pre-buy due to BS6 is something which is certainly going to kick in, because this is something which has happened in all the global markets wherever equivalent norms have come in. So we are hopeful that Q2 onwards, or maybe towards the end of Q2, one should see a good pickup happening in the demand.
In light of these dynamics, a word on inventory management. You said it will have to be judicious, keeping in mind the kind of environment we are in. Could you tell me a bit about your inventory and at what level you are comfortable?
Yeah, so I think inventory we are going to manage at a more granular level, right? So there will be some variants which will be fast moving. So in terms of numbers, they may have higher inventory, but in terms of number of days consumption, they'll still be under control. So we will manage the inventory at a granular level and also in the entire value chain. So right from dealers to our factories to the suppliers. And this is something, there is a strong governance which has been put in place in the company, because we have to ensure that there is no BS4 vehicle available on 1st April 2020. So there is a good focus within the organization on this, and we are now that there is a good clarity that 1st April no BS4 vehicles to be there, I think we will manage it going through this year.
So what's your visibility on the first half of the current fiscal? With elections getting over in a couple of days, we'll know whether we have a stable government that will bring an element of certainty. Do you think that this will help demand revival in some pockets?
I think commercial vehicle demand is very strongly correlated to the overall economy, and within that the macroeconomic factors. And therefore what will actually help is some of the headwinds that one sees today, whether it is the liquidity crunch or the manufacturing and consumption both have kind of slowed down. Once I think these start picking up, we should see demand coming back in commercial vehicles, and this is something apart from the BS6 pre-buy. Now if we read what's happening around, I think it appears that from Q2 onwards, manufacturing and consumption should probably come up again, and once that comes up, and there are quite a few sectors which impact commercial vehicles, so once those sectors start doing well, I think the growth should come back.
So my last question, it's about the BS6 phenomena, if I could say, we are seeing. You did point out that you anticipate an acceleration when it comes to purchases, even though you expect that going forward, prices can go up by 1 lakh, which will prompt this behavior from customers. Would it be fair to assume that this sentiment will actually be the main growth driver for the second half of the current fiscal? And what will your strategy be, keeping in light the diesel category post BS6?
It will certainly be one of the key criteria, right? The pre-buy will be a key criteria. Now, in terms of our strategy, see, commercial vehicle is bought by a customer to do business, right? So finally, what is important for the customer is operating economics. So when we give the customer a vehicle, in a BS6 vehicle, suppose, yes, there will be a price increase, but finally, what will be important is what kind of operating economics we are delivering to the customer. And I think therefore the focus will be to see to it that we are giving a fair amount of operating economics, which will therefore ensure that the impact which will be there once we get into BS6 due to the price increase is also muted, and if there is a structural demand available, then people can move towards BS6.